Turn our focus onto one of the latest books out on our stores as a regular feature on Vuka Africa. Well, the book When Money Destroys Nations by Philip Haslam with Russell Lamberti has just been released. This book looks into the vast money printing programs in developed countries today and whether any of them could ever become like Zimbabwe. To unpack this intriguing book, I'm now joined in studio by Philip, who's a co-author of this book, and I've actually got a copy in front of me, When Money Destroys Nations. Philip, appreciate your time. Tell us, I guess a lot of research goes into something like this. Explain to us the research involved.
Morning, Peter. Yeah, it takes a lot of research. In total, I'd initially expected to do it in a very short space of time. In total, it's taken me 21 months to do the research, to do the drafting and writing, and to do the editing. It's finally come out. It started in January last year. And we're very pleased to see it in the stores. Yeah.
Why? That's the question I have for you. I mean, why is this important? And just give us a summation of what's covered in the book.
Great. So currently in the world today, countries around the world, including America, Japan, Europe, and England, are all printing money on a large scale. In total, since 2008, they've printed $7 trillion. If you speak to most economists, they'll tell you why it's really good. And very, very few people are actually answering the long-term question of what actually happens when nations print money. So it was my goal then to go to Zimbabwe to study the hyperinflation that they had there, to study what were the causes of the hyperinflation, how the economy descended, and how it went from an ordinary economy and descended into this bizarre chaos of hyperinflation. And then
so you actually went to Zimbabwe and spent some time there?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I interviewed 75 people there, and their stories are fascinating. It's fascinating, tragic, and heartbreaking, because hyperinflation isn't these esoteric principles that are talked about by economists. Yeah. It's a real, these are real events that happen in individual people's lives.
In layman's terms, what causes hyperinflation? Just printing too much money?
So it is printing of money, but very few people know that there's been 55 hyperinflations in the world in the last 100 years. So that's on average about one every 2 years, more than one every 2 years. And the standard thing happens with most hyperinflations is a government will spend and go into debt, and during that time, everyone's happy. Everyone's saying, look, please, the government needs to spend for these very special interest projects, and the government debt increases, and typically debt increases in all levels of society. Then a time comes when lenders say, hang on a second, I'm not sure if the government can actually repay those debts. And they withdraw their lending facilities. And at that time, the government is then faced with a decision. Do they shut down shop and they reduce their expenses and they increase taxes and repay those debts? Or do they print money to continue spending? So that's typically the start of how a country goes into hyperinflation.
Based on that, you're saying that government are responsible?
Absolutely, absolutely. So money printing is driven by debt, and inflation is driven by money printing. And it's a cycle. It takes a while. So in Zimbabwe, it took 11 years. But it takes a while for that money printing to make its way into the economy and lead to a final collapse of the currency. It's obviously different time periods for different countries, but it's absolutely driven by the decisions of government, and it ultimately is a political decision.
I mean, I traveled to Zimbabwe and picked up a $1 trillion Zimbabwe note. I mean, it was probably not even worth the ink that was printed on it. Tell us what the situation is there now.
So the currency collapsed in 2008 at the end of hyperinflation. After 3 years of intense, it was 11 years of money printing, 3 years of the final intense hyperinflation experience that people had experienced. And then they had no currency. They literally had to import boxes of US dollar notes that are getting circulated around the economy. But it's different because in our economy, if your rands break, then you put them back in the bank and the bank destroys them and reissues them. Okay? But in Zimbabwe, you don't have that luxury. So these notes are being traded tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times. And most of the notes are dirty, old, dog-eared. You can't see what the denominations are. You can't take them back to America to trade in them. No one would receive them in America. So you've got a real problem now in Zimbabwe at the moment with their current currency environment.
What I find fascinating is why they went to the US dollar and not go to another currency, like the South African rand or whatever. What makes the US dollar so significant?
So the US dollar currently is the global reserve currency. It's the currency which denominates most of the world's trade. But in 2008, when Zimbabwe, what they call dollarized, they actually just made it a free-floating currency environment. So I can go into Zimbabwe and pay with rands. Now, typically, you can only pay with rands in Bulawayo. People only really would receive rands in Bulawayo, but further north, they will receive dollars and pounds, as an example. And there's a number of other currencies that you can pay with in Zimbabwe.
Incredible. Obviously, one of the chapters says, a global storm brewing. Looking into your golden ball, what is this global storm and what's brewing?
So we've tried to take the Zimbabwe story, we've tried to take it as a template. Okay, and use it as a case study, as it were, for what happens when a country goes into debt and then responds with money printing. So very briefly, if you look at it in America, the total government debt is $18 trillion. But if you include corporate and individual debt, it's $56 trillion. But if you include social security debt, so the obligations to pay pensions, medical aid, those sorts of things, it's about $156 trillion. So
I can't even comprehend those numbers.
You can't even comprehend those numbers. If you look in Japan, the total debt they have is 1 quadrillion yen. Yeah. I mean, it's 15 zeros. Yeah. It's 1 billion million yen that they owe. And in these economies, we had a major crisis in 2008. It was a debt crisis. And in response, all of these economies have started printing money to repay these debts, to fund the banks, and to keep government afloat.
Unbelievable. Philip, tell us about where people can get the book. Yeah, this is fascinating reading. It's crazy.
You can get the book at all major bookstores, all the exclusive bookstores stock it, and you can get it on Kalahari as well as Amazon. Quickly,
Russell Lamberti, who is he and what is your sort of association with him?
He's a close friend of mine. He's also an economist. He and I have a great working relationship. My goal is to take economics and make it simple for people. So if you look in the book is written for the lay person, very easy to understand with lots of stories. He has come in and his goal is to make it economically very sound. So on the one end, it's from my side, I'm wanting to make sure that individuals who don't understand these concepts can read it. And on the other side, we need to make sure that even central bankers who are printing money on a large scale would be able to read it and the economics are sound. So he's provided a weightiness and a economic soundness to the book, and together I think we've made a great partnership and a great team.
Well, congratulations there. This is fantastic. And when money destroys nations, I'm going to give you a quick episode, how hyperinflation ruined Zimbabwe and how ordinary people survived, and warnings for nations that print money. It's Philip Haslam. He's sitting next to me. Get it at all your leading bookstores, CNA, exclusive books. Get yourself a copy. It's fascinating reading. It's layman's terms, and it really is fascinating. Phil, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming to chat to us.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here.
Well, let's